All right, so I just want to start first off.
Yeah,
I just want to start first off by saying how special this moment is to me. I've been thinking about a podcast for a long time, and now it's finally here. And it just so happens we have a super special guest, a very special guest. Today we're going to get in the mind of someone who has made it on a lot of levels, self-made, finance, real estate, fitness, AI, tech, and he does it all by keeping a super low profile, no social media. He doesn't talk about, his success story. So very special. Ben, thank you for being here.
So it's been a long time since we last seen each other. Obviously, I know you to some degree, but I don't know you very well. Same with our viewers and our listeners. But if you can, man, kind of like give a little bit about your origin, your background. Like, originally you're from the East Coast, and how was it growing up on that side, and what made you want to chase something bigger than what you could have possibly dreamed of?
Yeah, so I, first of all, I was born in Shanghai. I moved to the States when I was 6. My dad was studying at the time at Northeastern. He was a late bloomer. I think it was more because it was difficult for Chinese to come to the U.S. to study at the time. So he didn't do his undergraduate until he was 33. He graduated at 37.
Oh wow!
And then he worked in finance. He still does actually. He's a fund manager. So I moved with my mom. He came first, and then I moved with my mom when I was 6. We moved around Massachusetts, Connecticut, and then I ended up in college in Maine, right?
Maine.
Yeah. Maine.
How is Maine?
Maine. That's I think I always thrived in smaller educational settings, right? So I went to prep school, or it wasn't a boarding prep school, but I went to Fairfield Prep in Connecticut, and that was small, faculty student ratios, and I wanted something like that for college as well. So I went to Bowdoin. Thereafter, also I think we had maybe 11 or 20 to 1 sort of faculty student ratio.
Oh wow!
So that's what I wanted from education. I like the liberal arts education. I didn't know what I wanted to do originally. I think I wanted some foundation finance, economics. I wanted to be able to write. So I thought liberal arts was definitely the right starting place. And so went to school in Maine, and then worked in New York in finance, and then later on during the recession, came back to Asia, right, and then continued my career there. In terms of your second question, or the question regarding why I want to chase something bigger than myself, I think that's a pretty loaded question, right? I mean, I think we need to be a little more specific, right? If we're talking about chasing money, we talk about chasing legacy. Are we talking about building empires? What was
your motivation, and like what inspired you? What made you choose the path that you're going down currently? Like, what challenges did you face along the way? Like, just what motivated you every day to wake up and be like, no, this is what I want to do, and this is what I have to do to get there?
Well, I think at the very core of it, I think I wanted to make money, obviously, right? And
everyone does.
And especially because I had immigrant parents, and I saw how hard my parents worked, right? And I think always instilled sort of those, I guess we call Puritan work ethics, or whatever that term we learn in school. Yeah. To work hard and make money. It's the American dream, right? That's why you're here as an immigrant. But I think what really drove me was the fact that I was always the underdog, right? Because as a Chinese minority or Asian minority, it's not like a Hispanic or blacks aren't even considered minority, right?
And you're on the East Coast?
Yeah, you're on the East Coast, right? With predominantly Caucasian communities, right? And I grew up not really having any money, right? Wearing hand-me-downs. I was a food stamp kid. I was filling out those yellow envelopes, right, for free school lunch.
Crazy.
So I didn't want that life, right? So I always knew that to get out of that, I had to make money, right?
Yeah.
So that really was the motivation originally. I think, and I still have that sort of underdog mentality, right? Because once you get too comfortable, he stopped chasing, right? So I still like preferring to be the underdog, to be honest. I prefer to have people underestimate me and tell me why I can't do something, right?
Let me ask you something. Sorry, Kay, I'll let you continue, but you just mentioned about being like the underdog. Me and you've had conversations before. When you finished college and you went off to New York, that was a decision you made, and you didn't have money at that point, right? Like you were down bad, essentially.
No. My parents, aside from education, paying for the bulk of my education, really was not in the mentality or I guess they were not about giving their kids money, right? And that really stems from a few different Asian cultural values, but the eldest son had to go and make his own money, and I do thank them to this day, right? I didn't really understand it back in the day, right? But I think today now, I told my father, a few months ago we were having a conversation about adulthood and parenting, and I thanked him. I said, look, the best thing you probably did for me was to put me out and say, look, no matter what, you need to sink or swim, right? So so in New York I had no money. I was an investment banker at the time. I thought I had made it, right? And then I think I remember I was on $60,000 a year, $10,000 golden handshake, and at that time that was big money, right? But then I showed up in New York and I had federal, state, city tax, and then my apartment was like I think $1,600 a month, and I realized I had no money.
How big was your apartment in New York?
It was tiny. It was like a studio. It was like a bed and there was a couch, and I don't think I even had a TV, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah. And
New York, man, I can't.
So you got to New York. You were working, making $60,000 a year, and from New York you go back to Shanghai.
Yep, back to Shanghai
for work.
For work, I was in the venture capital business. Seconded to actually one of the largest, our largest portfolio investment, our largest investment company, which was a data center at the time, and I believe it was the largest privately owned data center in China, right? And that's kind of fast forward to where we'll talk about my career today and how that kind of circles back. And so I spent 2 years in Hangzhou, Shanghai, and then I had an opportunity to come to Hong Kong to do asset management, so I did that, and then I spent I think 13 years in Hong Kong thereafter, still in finance, talking about asset management, sell-side equities, back to sort of a few years ago, running my own hedge fund, and then off to obviously now in Tokyo, right? So
fire, love Tokyo, man. Yeah. Every time you mention Tokyo, I'm probably gonna say that every single time. I love Tokyo.
It's definitely booming.
Bring in a breakthrough.
Yeah. So real quick, I wanted to ask you because I think I had read this somewhere. Like when you were after New York, after Shanghai, you go to Hong Kong. Right. You were. Correct me if I'm wrong, you were one of the youngest CEOs of one of the casinos in Macau?
Oh, well, and I wasn't the CEO. I mean, that's a tall order, but I was the youngest vice president of finance, probably the youngest vice president
how old?
in Macau at the time. I think I was 29, 30.
Oh, wow.
And for people who don't know, Macau is the Vegas but much nicer of Hong Kong, right?
Well, at the time, Macau was, in terms of revenues, it was the largest gaming hub in the world, right? It was much bigger than Vegas, because Vegas, you understand, it was a mice business. It was family, right? It was non-gaming revenues. Right? It was all about entertainment. Where Macau was all about VIP junket, high rollers. It was a different game, right? So I worked for a company that was single property wise the largest casino in the world at the time. It was larger than Sands. I mean, Sands is obviously larger in terms of the entire portfolio, but single property wise. And my company at the time was the largest, right? So I was vice president of FP&A, so I did budgeting, I did financial forecasts, analysis, right?
So I know there's a lot in between what my next question is going to be for you, and we'll circle back because I want to know the details as well. But present day, you're now the CEO of one of the biggest, if not the biggest, AI company in Tokyo, correct?
Well, I don't think we're the biggest, but I do think that definitely the youngest CEO in the space, in terms of the listed space, right? Publicly.
Youngest VP, youngest CEO.
Publicly listed, right? I guess AI software company. in Japan, right? So we're listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange main board.
So for someone like me, obviously you know where I'm from, and I just come from a much different world. You know that very well, but like it's so hard for someone like me to fathom like people living that life that you live. And I don't mean like the materialistic things; those things are tight. But I just mean like the lifestyle of running an actual huge corporation. So for Quantum Solutions, that's the name of the company, right?
Yeah.
How did you even land that role? Did they recruit you? Is this something you were with, like, from networking? How did that happen?
Well, I was working with people that I've worked with before, right? So in Hong Kong, for a period of time, I was CEO of a listed company in Hong Kong, right? And it was part of the board, actually, there were board members that are board members now currently in Quantum Solutions, right? So they brought me on. In Japan. At the time, I was running my own hedge fund. I think I wanted something that was just bigger than making money, right? So I was quite comfortable already, and I wanted something that was challenging and in a new environment for me.
So I guess I got 2 follow-up questions with that. My first question would be, how was it, or how is it being, you know, at the time, being the youngest VP for a company, and then being, you know, publicly listed as the youngest CEO of a company? What challenges did you face? Because, you know, usually when you hear somebody say, oh yeah, I'm VP of this, or president of this, or I'm CEO of this, you usually kind of think like, oh, this guy gotta be 50 plus, 60 something, whatever the case is. But then when you see someone that's like relatively close to your age, or in the younger spectrum of things, and you hear how successful that person is, you just can't help but think, like, what challenges do you face, and how do you maintain that position, you know?
Right. I think the biggest challenge is probably managing people, right? And particularly managing people that are older than you, right? So you just appropriately mentioned that most people are going to be your seniors, right? In terms of age, you know, 50, 60 years, probably in many areas have more experience. So I think, how do you manage and motivate a team that will be older than you for the most part? And how do you manage different aspects of the business, right? So as a CEO, you're not going to be the best in every category, right? Every business division, right? You have to know at least, right? You have to know finance, accounting, operations, sales, marketing, right? So you have to know a little bit about everything, but you need to have the ability to motivate and attract talent, right? So people that can actually be the best at every single one of those, business lines, right? To work for you, right? And then retain them. So once again, it's a management difficulty, right? At the end of the day. I think that's the hardest.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, dealing with people that are older than you, and they feel like, I don't know how I can take orders from someone younger than me. How do you know? What do you know? Or anything like that. So
100%. Real quick, I actually just pulled it up behind you. You don't have to like break your neck or anything, but Quantum Solutions. So what exactly, if you had to explain this to someone like me who has no idea, what exactly do you guys do?
So we are the 2 main business lines, right? So we are a digital entertainment company, and that separates into games, right? So games, so we have AI games, IP games, right? So that's sort of the digital entertainment, and then we have what we call AIDC Solutions, which is cloud computing services for corporate enterprises, right? So that's how we separate AI. So you have the infrastructure side, which is your data center services, right? Cloud computing services. And then you have the software side, right? And we call them, digital entertainment, your games, and then providing corporate software solutions, right, to clients. So that's how.
This shit is so crazy just hearing it. Like, I'm hearing them, but I'm not hearing them. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's so
I can't fathom that type of like.
No, we're young. We're young. We're growing. Different challenges, different markets. Japan is a different animal, right? You're dealing with a country that is still very much, I would say, enclosed in terms of the mindset to foreigners coming in and operating in a big way in that market. Things are definitely slower. I don't think that's a secret, given how the economy has been declining in the last few decades. So Japan has its own challenges, right? It's every country working, whether it's Macau, Hong Kong, Japan. They're going to have their own specific problems, right? That you have to overcome.
I'm definitely going to come back to the AI thing, but I want to pivot a little bit real quick because something else that I think it's been a year or two since you maybe brokered this deal. I don't know if that's the right term, but the deal between, I forget which Chinese company it was and which Saudi company. I believe it was like for an amusement park in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
So I'm actually the chairman of international business development for another listed company. I would say actually that's more of a committee role, right? And for a listed company in Hong Kong called Haichang Ocean Park, which is the largest marine theme park operator. I would say by animal inventory, it's probably the largest in the world, but it's definitely the largest in Asia, right? So I think the animal inventory is larger than SeaWorld. I think in terms of land size, it's definitely the largest theme park operator in Asia, at least. So at the time we
shout out to Asia.
We I brought them and spearheaded their expansion into Saudi Arabia because, as you know, I've always been very positive on the Middle East. I put my own money there, and I have real estate investments in both the UAE and now Saudi Arabia. I think, I do believe that entertainment and theme parks is going to be a big, has a lot of potential, I think, in that region for the next 20 years at least. Yeah,
because they're trying to make it really. They're trying to build a tourism.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing there, right? I mean, I think Saudi, in a way, is trying to catch up to Dubai, where Dubai now has, Dubai Abu Dhabi has everything, right? Almost from restaurants to nightclubs to family entertainment, where Saudi is really just starting to begin under the leadership of Mohammed bin Salman, right?
Question, and this is a little off the script here, but it just came to my mind, and it's a serious question. So, when you're in those boardrooms, when you're brokering these meetings, like I remember seeing a picture of you with the Saudi team and the Chinese team. It was just a phenomenal photo. And you're someone who, you're very corporate, but you're a little rough on the edges as well as an individual. Like you're okay with, for lack of a better term, some some hood things. You know what I mean? So when I know you're the only tatted guy in those boardrooms.
Absolutely.
You're the only guy that dresses.
I like that though.
No,
that type of shit I like because it makes it seem like you're more relatable to just like the general public and the average, just the average person. You know what I'm saying? Like you see someone like me, I got tattoos. I got a tattoo on my damn face for all sake. You know what I'm saying? Tattoos all on my hands, shit like that. And then to be able to say I know someone of your stature and you're just like me in a sense, right? And you're successful and you can be in a room with people like me and Ed, and then you could be in a room with motherfucking CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and all this stuff. So I think that's always commendable to me when you're such a relatable person.
I agree with you. But my question is does that hurt anything? Like do any of your partners ever because of you're a little rough around the edges in some ways? I'm sure you're not in these corporate meetings and stuff, but you're tatted up, you dress a certain way. Does that ever affect any of these deals? Does it have any impact on it at all?
So far, no. I mean, I think I'm probably a little more conservative in Japan. I don't show my tattoos, right? I'm fully dressed. In the Middle East, I think at least the Saudis are, and the Emiratis as well. I think they're quite aware of American culture, right? And I think they like American culture, right? So you've seen they've bought all these, invested in U.S. companies, bought these U.S. IPs. So in a lot of the Saudis, right, actually have been educated in the U.S., right? So they've gone to school, they're part of fraternities, right? So I have a very close friend in the Ministry of Investments in Saudi Arabia who was a frat boy, right, in America, right? So the short answer is so far no. I don't think. I think it's probably more harmful when you're trying to get your foot in the door, when you're sort of lower level. I mean, you kind of need to conform to a corporate image, all right?
Right.
Where you need to be a little more wary about what you wear and your tattoos. But I think where I am now, it's more about what you bring to the table. What your value is.
Just to backtrack back to what I was asking about Dubai, and we'll move on. But to me, when I went to Dubai, it was like a whole different experience.
Mm.
What do you like so much about Dubai that makes you want to buy properties there? If it's just financial gain, that makes sense, but is it other things as well?
I don't know. I think I fell into Dubai at the time because Dubai was one of the only places during COVID that was open, right? So almost
Florida.
He's stupid.
yeah, in Florida, but Dubai had quite a bit of volatility in the real estate market, right? Because Dubai itself doesn't have any oil, right? So Dubai, for the most part, relied on financials, basically, entertainment, right, tourism, to build the country. And then when it gets in trouble, it goes to this big world Abu Dhabi, which has oil, and says, "Can you please help, bail me out?" So Dubai real estate actually had rough patches. But during COVID, what happened was, I think they had a lot of first-time visitors to Dubai, right? And people started realizing, wow, this is actually a nice place, right? And but the biggest factor when you look at investments, especially in the real estate market, is liquidity, right? So where is liquidity coming from? And at that time, because the government had made it so easy to purchase property, right? And it was, you could do it by cash, on a plane. Obviously, that's less likely now. You could do it via Bitcoin. It was very easy to purchase property. And then in terms of liquidity, you had the Chinese coming in, right? And then you had, obviously, the Russians coming in, right? And that so what happened with the U.S. relationship with Russia, that helped indirectly actually Dubai real estate, right? And then obviously you always had the Indians that were there, that underpinned the Dubai real estate market. They were the early investors, right? And of course you have Europeans. So every time the Middle East got into trouble or neighboring countries got into trouble, people found that it was that Dubai was a good place to invest because like I said, it was easy to purchase property, and I think also I don't want to say this directly, but it was easy to move money into Dubai. Right, and I think you know what I'm saying.
Right.
And I think I caught that relatively early. And during COVID, when I visited, I found some deals. I thought it was quite cheap.
So there's a lot of factors that went into it.
Yeah, but the main factor I said is you got to understand where liquidity is coming from, right? So what is going to drive the money in the marginal buyer into that region, right? And Dubai had all the right ingredients. And then over time, as the real estate obviously real estate market started booming, then there were spillover effects to other parts of the economy, right? And then they were able to reinvest that money back into what you see today in terms of the Dubai, entertainment offerings and lifestyle offerings, right?
100%. So do you see more investments coming into Dubai from you?
I personally think Dubai is pretty tapped out, to be honest. I think the next area of investment in that region, I think, is probably going to be Saudi Arabia. I think MBS is gunning for the best place in the Middle East, if not the world. He's coming out with Emirates Airlines, which is supposed to compete with Emirates. He's doing big things, right? So I think with his level of commitment, and as long as he can stay in power, I think he's really adamant about driving that vision. Right, and making Saudi the next hot place.
100%. I think when people ask me what I like about Dubai, I just talk about okay, cool. Thank you. So I want to ask you something else that I'm super interested in. You recently invested. Actually, I don't know if you know this. If you Google your name, your IMDb now pops up.
Yeah,
so you recently invested in a film.
Yeah, I did. I'm actually an executive producer and investor in that film, and I was in Las Cruces, New Mexico, on sets.
You got to go on the actual set.
Yeah, I was on set. It's actually quite an interesting movie. The movie's called The Protector. It's
an action movie.
It stars Mila Jovovich. You probably know her from the
Fifth Element.
Yeah, in Resident Evil, right? Resident Evil
and Fifth Element, orange hair.
And this movie is perfect for her. It's about an agent who basically ends up having a daughter that gets caught into this, sex trafficking ring, and then she needs, she goes and goes on this, this manhunt, trying to find her daughter, but she has a problem because she has amnesia, basically from her PTSD or whatever, and
She's trying to find her daughter while she has amnesia.
correct.
Oh,
So
shit.
she I won't spoil sort of the movie, but yeah, so she's trying to overcome that while trying to rescue and identifying her daughter, right? So that's the movie in a nutshell.
How the fuck do you get to a point where it's like, okay, now I'm just gonna invest in this film? Like, is it a friend of yours that referred you to this? Like, how do you just
How did I not get an audition for a role?
We have one guy that we actually bringing in, this guy Manny, who's who's a young actor that actually came in last minute because we had to replace one of the relatively more famous actors on sets because
Can you name drop?
No, we had an issue. We had an issue with that guy's actually, he's definitely a B-lister, but I think you would recognize him if you saw his face. But he had an issue, and then we brought someone else in, and he was young, and obviously not as famous as his predecessor, but he did a very good job. We were very happy with his work. Where we at?
We were just talking about the film.
Yeah, the film.
You were explaining the film to me. Last question on the film stuff. It's just super interesting to me. Do you see yourself as someone who wants to like actually jump in and really do some like more, invest more money into film, co-produce several films, or is this something you see yourself just jumping in and out? Obviously, probably the return has something to do with that, but
Yeah.
Is this something you're passionate about?
I mean, absolutely. I'm already looking at the second project now. It's filming, I think, in the next few months. I've been looking at continuous projects because of the relationship with the producer I just mentioned. I was even thinking about reallocating some of my investments into film. I do think it's an opportunity, right? Because Hollywood has a stigma now, right? You got the Weinsteins, you got Diddy,
the child,
right? You got all
weird
these
shit.
So the legacy guys,
Yeah.
right, have all got into some problems,
Yeah.
right? So I think there's an opportunity.
Essentially, the lane's wide open now.
Yeah, for a clean player,
Yeah.
someone that that
Talk
comes
to
in,
him.
yeah, that really is trying to do it for the business. That's not trying to jump on some females, right?
And just exploit.
Yeah, just exploit, right? That's the right word. I do think it's an opportunity now to have to come in and really recreate the image of Hollywood, right?
That's fire. I just want to audition for a role.
Yeah, I got you, man. I got you.
Horror, action, comedy.
100.
But horror, you gotta make sure I survive.
Nah, you're the first one.
I can't be the first one to go, bro. I can't be the
Nah,
first one to go.
if you're not Caucasian, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't make it to the end, right? Unfortunately, right? That's no, but we could change that. But I think that a lot of things, man. You're in music. We could do placement, right? For some of that music content, there's a lot of things we can do because film in itself has so many verticals, right? Like from product placement. Right, to music, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things we can do. Yeah.
I want to pivot. I want P to jump into this philosophy he was mentioning earlier.
Yeah, man. So, we'll get into some pretty deep shit with this in a sense, but really it's just like the philosophy on money and power, right? So people are always wondering like, how can I make my next dollar? How can I turn this 10 into $100 and et cetera, right? But no one ever really thinks about like the consequences of like not utilizing your money in a correct way, regardless of if you have $1,000 or if you have $10, right? So what would you say is the one thing that people get wrong when it comes to money, finances, and things like that?
I would say that, I think there's probably two main things, right? When it comes to making money, I think the first thing is Anthony knows this. I'm a big believer of manifesting, right? So what that means is you completely focus on your passion, right? So being passionate is important,
Right.
but you want to be constantly, sleeping, drinking, eating, right? Your dream, right? And that's how you stay focused, right? So people kind of get sidetracked by a lot of things. So manifesting your dreams and staying on track, right, about something that you're passionate about, I think that's very, very, very important. The second thing I would say is being smart. I mean, yeah, obviously smart about your finances, but also being smart about how you work, right, in allocation of time, right? So you want to be out there and not think about, am I saving $1 or $2 or $10, right? You want to go out there and say, like, how do I maximize what I have, right? So the first question you got to ask yourself, and this is a question that I ask everyone, even people that I interview, okay? You got to identify, for you to achieve your dreams, what makes you different, right? And this is appropriate and relevant for any industry you are in, right? As a musician, you're a singer, right? What makes you different? Is it because of your look? Is it because of your voice? Is it because of your lyrics? Is it, what are you really good at, right?
Right.
And once you figure out what you're really good at and what makes you better than other people, then you can really start growing yourself, right? So don't try to be something that you're not, right? So don't try to replicate another artist.
So
right?
manifest realistic things.
Yeah, I mean, like don't try to be something that don't try to sound like someone else that you're not, right? And maybe I don't know. I mean, I don't know as much about being an artist in terms of being a singer, but even for myself, I would say that I'm great at, because I'm so I'm so focused on learning new things, right? I'm always learning new things, right? So I can see and identify patterns, right? So I think pattern identification is one of my strong suits. When I see something, I immediately know. I don't want to spend time on it, right? So you might spend time looking at something and analyzing it for days and weeks and still not get it. I can do the same thing in 2 minutes. That right there, I'm ahead of you.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm already passed on this thing, right? You're still thinking about it, and then because you haven't had enough experience in your life, because you haven't dedicated your time in learning about something, that you will make mistakes, right? And you've just wasted all this time, right? Because you spent all this time on something that was never going to work out. So identifying patterns of success, right? That's one. Second thing is creating a team, a network that you can rely on, because they're going to help you out, right? Like we talked about, hiring or working with people that are very good or better than you at something. You learn from them, right? And they bring you opportunities, right? So expanding sort of that network base, okay, that will help you out as well, right? So, to distill it down, I think you got to figure out what you're really good at. So for me, it's about pattern identification. It's about, I think I'm a great salesperson. I'm a relatable salesperson, right? I always approach sales and doing deals from the angle of trying to see what the other person wants, right? And I'll be, I'll be blunt about it, since we're, this is.
It's a safe space.
No, that's not safe space. I mean, we're talking about, let's get down to the
real place.
To get to the bottom of it, right?
Yeah.
To get to the bottom of it. For you, everybody's has to do deals at some point, right?
Yeah.
Like so the best deal makers, I'll tell you right now, they're master manipulators.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta be super street smart, right? You can't be honest all the time, right? People that get honest, they get fucked, because 99% of the people in the world are not honest people, right? A lot of people want to go out with their pros and think, like, I want to trust this person. Like, I want to work with good people. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist.
Right.
So you got to be a master manipulator,
Mm.
right? To survive.
What zodiac sign is a master manipulator?
What are you?
I'm an Aquarius.
Let's go.
It's pretty
Let's
bad.
fucking
That's
go.
pretty bad. What do you?
I'm a Taurus, but I still fuck with y'all, you know what I mean? I still fuck with y'all boys, man. Taurus, hey,
Question. This is a real serious question. So,
Yeah.
I know you, and I know like what your day to day is like, and it's always 100 miles per hour, and you're very passionate about everything you put your energy into. Is it ever enough? Is your accomplishments, your bank account, your security, is it ever enough for you, or is there a point where it's like, okay, when I get here, then I can fucking relax a little bit? Because you're the type of guy who tears his fucking ACL, and the next 2 days you're in
patella tendon. That's worse.
patella tendon.
Yeah.
2 days later, hold on, let me finish the question. 2 days later, you're in the gym fucking
Yeah.
bench pressing.
Yeah.
So
2 days.
I'm not bullshitting you. So my question is it ever enough? Is there something that you're looking to achieve and then you can fucking take your foot off the gas? Or do you see yourself foot on the gas until you retire?
I don't know, man. I think by nature, I'm always building, you know, like whether it's film, whether it's, you know, AI, you know, whether it's tech, I'm always doing something, right? And whatever I choose to do, you brought up the example of the gym, even though it's a small example. You know, I try to do everything I can at 100%, right? You know, 100 miles an hour, right? Because that's just the way I build my mind, you know, my mindset, right? So it takes discipline, right? It takes that focus, right? So I work out, every day of the week. I get up at 6, I go to the gym, right? And if I have a meeting, I'm still going to the gym at 1 a.m. Yeah. I got off that plane last time in Tokyo, I was in the gym at 1 a.m.
That's fire, though.
You know, because that's the level of discipline.
That's the type of shit that's hella cool, though. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and he's not doing it for fucking the internet. He's not doing it for other people.
Really not. Motherfucker ain't even got no goddamn social media. So how the heck, like Jay-Z said, if it wasn't for these pictures, you wouldn't see me at all.
Exactly. Don't do it for anyone else. You gotta do it for you, because you gotta be honest with yourself first and foremost.
I was gonna say, because you mentioned manifestation, right? We talked about this briefly last night. I believe in manifestation, right? But I feel like, to piggyback off what you said about that, I feel like at some point then, because, you know, there's a difference between actually manifesting and then me sitting here manifesting, saying, yeah, I'm definitely going to get me a Ferrari. I won't manifest myself a Ferrari. But it's just empty. It's just empty words, you know what I'm saying? So, like, does it more so abide by you having to be super self-aware and realistic and understand yourself truly to be able to manifest properly?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Like, you gotta understand what you're good at.
Exactly.
You know, what makes you different.
Because people, like I said, people just be out here thinking like, oh yeah, I'm about to manifest me a big house and a car and blah blah blah, but don't really put any, they don't pour any water into the cup or anything like that. So
I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I feel like, yeah, I mean, for sure, but manifesting a Ferrari or a house is just stupid, to be honest, because you should manifest what your ultimate goal is, right? So you want to be the best artist. You want to be on the billboards, right? You want to be platinum artist, right? That's what you should be manifesting. And then everything else comes and falls into place along the way. But I'm saying, like, in terms of awareness, right? And I do believe that once you have and put your energy into doing that, and this is going to get a little metaphysical, but I do believe in energies, right? So, for example,
welcome to the void, baby.
You know, how many times have you thought about somebody, and then all of a sudden they hit you up? Right, you haven't talked to this person.
That's facts.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
super facts.
It's like, it could be, it could be a dude, it could be a chick. Like, you haven't talked to in years, maybe. And you just all of a sudden, it's just like, wait, I'm thinking about this person, and you're thinking about texting this person. All of a sudden, they hit you at the same time, right?
Random shit.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you're like, whoa, I was just, you know, I was about to hit you up.
I could never grasp that understanding of it, like. That's always weird to me. For example, like, I'm thinking about texting my homie or my girl, whatever the case is, and I don't take the action, but I'm just thinking about it. And then I'm like, okay, let me grab my phone, and then bing, and I look, and it's the person I wanted to hit up.
And then that's a very small example of sort of attracting, you know, different types of energies. And so once you put that kind of thought process or your energy into a bigger thing, which is manifesting your dreams, like the energies will start flowing into the way you want it to go.
100%. I'm a big believer of that. This podcast is a form of manifestation.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been talking about this for a long time.
Exactly.
I want to ask something that doesn't even relate to any of this shit, but really, like, when you started to see your first life success and stuff like that, when did you decide, like, okay, this is, like, you know, as far as the luxury purchase,
I'm getting a bag.
I'm getting a bag. Okay, now I'm about to go and cop me a little something. What was your first purchase that made you be like, yeah?
We're not even talking about the Rolls Royce you just bought.
Yeah.
We're talking about your first.
Well, that's 7 months out. But I think my first purchase was probably the one that had the most meaning. Was probably Santa Monica property, right?
Very nice property.
Right.
See, there you go. Back to the business and the plays. I love it though.
Because he knows, you know, like, he's known me for a while, man. I remember first coming out to LA. This was when I was probably still in college, and I can't remember if I was in Venice Beach or if I was in Santa Monica, and I was walking, you know, around the boardwalk, right? And I was like, I'm gonna give myself a place like this one day. That's what I said to myself. And I remember I told him, I was like, I always said that I was going to get a place.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the first property, the Santa Monica property, was on Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
which is a street away from
From the
the pier, right? From the ocean, right? So we did that. In terms of, you know, material items, I think it was probably the Patek I bought. 5980.
You kind of cooled down on the watches, right?
I cooled on everything actually.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if it's part of it. Part of me was
Are those
was
phases?
Yeah, I think definitely, because after a while you realize they don't really fulfill you. It's kind of like, you know, we did the whole run. Yeah, Anthony knows, you know.
He had the Richard Mille.
You know, we did the Urus run. We did the Bentayga. We had a Bentayga that I bought without even having a license, because I just walked into LA.
You let us whip the Bentayga around. We whipped that whole around LA.
And that was our shit. And that was probably the dumbest purchase. My favorite purchase, my dumbest purchase was probably the Bentayga, because I walked into LA City Cars, and you know, within like 10 minutes, I saw the car. I was like, I'm buying this thing. It was, you know, it was cash, right?
Didn't the dealer think you were bullshitting?
Oh yeah. I mean, most people like probably, yeah. I mean, they're pretty taken aback by the size of the purchase and
the casualty of it.
The casualty, the small amount.
You're not even financing it.
This is so casual.
No financing.
No.
You just cop that shit cash.
Sure.
It's not normal.
I remember losing like $60,000 on that car in the first, like, ended up selling it. Never drove it because I didn't have, you know.
We drove it for you, so it's not
exactly. I never had.
We got the use out of it.
Exactly. But look, I've calmed down a lot, and I think a lot of it's because my passions have changed, right, and self-awareness, right.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you should still do that, because that's part of your journey.
Yeah.
Right? I can't tell you something that I went through and say, look, you know, this is for me and it's not for you, because your awareness comes through your life experience, right? So once you've made those purchases one day, you're like, and then 10 years later, you're like, you know what? I'm done with this, right? Like, so I've sold basically all my watches except for, you know, a few Rolexes that I still have.
Yeah.
And you know, the cars and all that. I mean, actually, the Rolls Royce was a purchase because I feel like, one, I do need a car, right? In Japan.
That was your first car you bought, was a Rolls Royce?
No, the first.
No.
The first car was Bentayga.
Oh, damn. Oh, that's right.
He just got the 2025 Rolls Royce Go. It's not even there. It's 7 months away.
Yeah, but actually, I'm thinking about changing it for the Spectre.
Regardless, bro, it's fucking insane.
If I can get my license in time, which I guess 7 months to do it, but I put I got a deposit down, so let's see what happens.
Shit. I just wanted to say too, like, just to wrap up my part of things, for someone who's watching this, someone like myself, someone that's trying to strive for something bigger in a sense, what is the best advice that you received in your journey? And then what advice would you give someone that's trying to obtain something larger than the program per se? You know? Especially for those people that come from an upbringing like yourself that didn't have much, you know, Project Baby or whatever the case is, they in Section 8, Zone 6, wherever the case is, and they trying to make it out. Beat the system, beat the
They have a mind to do it.
And they have the mindset to do it, obviously not the resources, but they have the intellectual capacity to do it. What's the advice that you would give someone like that?
I think a lot of advice is probably on the internet. You know, I don't want to repeat something that's been regurgitated, right? I mean, I'll give you one nugget, I would say, that's kind of carried me through, right? And I don't want to give you something that's very broad,
right?
And you know, hallelujah, but I would say that one thing that made me, I think, successful in the sense that I've taken less falls than most people, and the reason is because of how I approach dealing with people, okay? And actually this is something that my father told me that I've always remembered, and he said, you go through life looking at every situation, every interaction, every deal like a silent film. Don't listen to what people say. Look at the film and the moving pieces of what they're doing. Right? Does that make sense? It's like it's a silent film, right? So you're just seeing what their actions are, and that will tell you everything. Right? Because you always get caught up with, you know, Anthony knows this as well. People will tell you, you know, great things about you, you know, to get you to do something. They'll tell you they're going to do this for you. They're going to, you know, guarantee you this. They're going to, you know, they're trying to get your confidence and your trust. But once you look at that as a silent film, it's like a silent movie, right? You take the words out of it, and then you really see what the motivations are. Right.
Show me, don't tell me.
Exactly. But I mean, you just watch everything unfold. You don't ever listen to what people say. don't ever listen to what people say.
Mm.
And that will save you a lot of pain and a lot of mistakes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because people do get wrapped up in words.
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time because we are social creatures,
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And other people will project how they feel on you, and it could be no direct correlation to what you have going on. They could just say something to you that isn't necessarily even true.
Yeah,
And now you hear that and you take it seriously.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think the other thing I would say, you talk about people from the projects, and people kind of coming up, and I tell Anthony this all the time. It's sort of like managing your temperament, right? So young people, especially in America, tend to get into these arguments, right? So you're getting the second nugget here, and they get their emotions easily. So the younger generation, and still old generation as well, people tend to let their emotions get the better of them, right? And actually, I had a conversation with my business partner, my mentee, last few months. I tell him the same thing, and he's a very capable guy. And I said, look, you need to control that violence, right? You need to control that anger and direct it and channel that into motivation, right? And if you need to use any emotion, whether it's anger or it's happiness, you do it with purpose, right? So I'll give an example. Once again, we're talking about, in the void and about honesty. I normally, when I get angry, it's for a purpose. It's because I don't want to do something.
Yeah.
Maybe because I don't want to pay somebody. Maybe because I want the deal to break. That's when I will create a reason to be angry. You see how I've channeled that as a tool.
Right.
I never make decisions because of my anger, or even because of my happiness, or because of elation, or because, like you said, you do, people do certain things because they like something. Right? But when we talk about in the money business, when we talk about trying to achieve your dreams, you got to take that entire emotion, right? And that's sort of like the Buffett kind of philosophy as well. And you take that off the table, right?
100%.
And you bring it back on when you need it, right? For certain situations.
It's that self-control, that having a good sense of self-awareness.
Take it all out. Take it all out.
And it takes one bad moment to ruin it.
It's almost like and for lack of a better word, you're weaponizing. You're weaponizing your
Do you
emotions.
think those people that come from those sort of areas have more of an advantage when they do have that breakthrough?
I think so, because I think everything they learn from the street smarts, to getting yourself out of sticky situations and managing that level of stress, right? Because these guys are, if you're poor and you're in the projects, you're stressed, right? You're stressed, right?
That's why when you said it's managing your temperament, that's like, oh wow, I never really heard somebody mention that part of it.
That's
You know what I mean? Because
something
that's some, exactly. Same thing with me. I always get told like, yo,
I'll give you an example, right? I'll give you an example right now, live example, right? So if you and I have a deal going on, right? And I owe you some money, right? And I know I got to pay you next month, right? So here's what's going to happen, right? I'm going to create a situation where you and I are going to have a falling out, and I'm going to pin everything on you. I'm like, Pete, you did this, blah, 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 1, 2, 3, right? And I will stick that into your brain for probably a month, and I'll make you feel bad about it. I'm like, Pete, this is your fault. You did me dirty. And then when the payment comes along, I'm like, Pete, look, I want to pay you, bro. Like, you did me dirty.
Yeah.
Right?
I can't justify paying you now.
I can't justify paying the whole amount. Right? And I'm going to make it a problem. I'm like, Pete, look, I like you, right? But you know what? Last few months, you're supposed to do this, this, and that. You didn't do it. Right? So, look, I want to pay you, but I don't think I should pay you the whole thing because, I feel like I was wrong. Right? I'm going to be angry at you about it. I could care less. I just want to pay you less.
Right.
But I'm weaponizing that anger at you.
You're using it as a tool to not have to come up all this money.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And it's something that
You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
And the other way, when being a master manipulator in the deal-making process, like I could gas you up the whole time for something. Like, P, look, you're great at this, right? Blah, blah, blah. And then I'm trying to take something from you. I'm like, you like me so much now, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, if you were to do this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? Let me throw in my cut. Let me get something like, You see what I'm saying? Like, I've gassed you up. I've done the other way. I made you so happy. And I'm all about this. I'm all about P right now, right? Because I want to get something from you.
100%.
No, for sure. And I think I'm pretty good at distinguishing what's real and what isn't when it comes to those certain instances, So I think for me, I'm fortunate enough to read between the lines, but like for others, that can be very, very difficult, especially when you weaponize something that you learn to that you probably couldn't maintain or handle, and you learn to turn that into a weapon to your advantage.
Exactly.
That's like kind of,
that's free
crazy.
game right there. That's
Handling,
free game.
so, and I think that comes along with the temperament of the person. So like if I'm able to sit in my resolve and be cool, calm, collected in the midst of chaos of you creating this problem between us, right?
Yeah.
If I can maintain my temperament and my cool, I can, like Nipsey said, to get through it, you gotta remain calm and think smart, right? To get through a situation that's hectic. So if you can sit there and actually like dissect what's happening, because like even though you said you create the situation where like, okay, for a month I'm gonna implement and plant in your head that you were the problem. The whole time, me being true to myself and believing in what I know I did and what I've done on my end, it's like, nah, there's no way that's gonna happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but see, I'm like, yeah, I would do it differently then. What I would do is I would get you to sympathize with me. I would play like a docile animal. I'd be like, P, man, I'm going through something.
Yeah.
Right? Like, look, my mom's in the hospital. Right? Like, I got these bills coming up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd be like, yo, P, like, can you help me out? You know what I'm saying? And I would drag this out. I would be like, I owe you 100 grand. I'd be like, P, look, I just had these bills come up. My homie just died. Right? Like, yeah, but I was saying, like, like, time heals everything, man. Like, once you start accepting, like, imagine if I just drag this out, you might hit me up. Like, you might be real aggressive hitting me up, and then you feel bad for me. Like, I might give you 5-10 grand out of the 100, but 2 years later, I might still owe you another 80 grand.
Yeah.
Because I'm still like, P, look, I'm down on my luck, man. I just lost my job. I got this going on, got that going on.
And then eventually it gets to the point where you create a falling out, and then I get to the point where like, you know what, bro? Now my hand is forced where either I'm gonna just stop dealing with this guy, or I'm gonna have to take action in a way that is either out of my character or whatever the case is not going to be beneficial for either one type.
But most likely what's going to happen, because the time has gone, like, it's gone on so long.
It just dies out.
No. What might happen, like, you'll be like, you know what, just give me 30 grand, bro.
Oh yeah, you just you settle on the thing, and
then
then
right. But that's what I wanted. I won that. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
But see, I'm saying that's taking the emotion out of it, but playing that emotion of sympathy, of anger, right, to your advantage, and then you can use. I mean, I don't know if we should even release this kind of nugget of knowledge here.
No,
we gonna definitely. This is sick.
Free
like
game,
this is gonna go on the Patreon. You gotta pay for this now.
There's only everybody's telling you the same thing out there, right?
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
The girls, the money, all this stuff. Like, this is what you gotta do. You gotta be a man, all this stuff. But they don't tell you how you get it done.
That's definitely free game. You know what I'm saying? But not when this shit goes on Patreon. It's not gonna be free game.
All right, let me transition here because Bing, I know your time is very valuable, bro. First off, I just appreciate you coming here. It's a very early stages in this podcast, and the fact that we have someone of your status as our first guest, it means the whole world to me. So, lastly, to wrap this up, man, what do you have? What are you excited for? What do you have coming up this year, other than the film, that's exciting for you right now?
You know, it's still going to be the Japan company. We're doing big things. I can't talk about it right now, but hopefully next time I come back, I'll have more updates for you. But we're doing some historical things in Japan. You know, when it comes to the data center side, when it comes to the IP game side. And I don't say that as just to embellish.
Shit,
company
talk your shit, man. Talk your shit.
But next time I'll be able to share more things, and hopefully I think it'll be it'll blow your mind, right?
For
so
sure.
Once that happens, aside from that, it's obviously we're doing some more family time.
Yeah.
Seeing my son play basketball, my daughter play flag football.
Andres Garcia, the best kids in the world.
Yeah, always improving, right? They grow up so fast. You know, that's definitely something that I look forward to on a daily basis or whenever I'm back in LA. And any new business ventures, right? That comes along the way. I mean, you never know. You never know what happens in the people that you meet. You know, always looking forward to meet new people that are capable and that can help me level up even, right? It happens all the time, right? I recently had a talk with one of my mentors, and even spending 30 minutes with them, I learned, things that I didn't even know, certain deal structures or financial structures that I knew was possible.
30 minutes, years worth of knowledge.
Exactly.
100%.
So, yeah, that's about it.
Well, I just want to wrap this up. Like I said, man, thank you. And for people who don't know, Bing's being very humble right now, man. He's not really popping his shit, man. This is a guy who really is in the 1%. And I'm just very grateful that you're here, brother. P, as always,
For
bro.
sure, man. Yeah, it's always dope linking up with Gabe, man. You know what I'm saying?
Already.
Mr. Liddy, even though he's
Already.
off the radar,
Thank you
man.
guys.
Mr. Liddy,
Thank you,
look
bro.
forward